I'm going to have to interrupt my Gold, The Truth Hidden in Plain Sight video series to bring you the latest developments in the U.S. debt and the Federal Reserve balance sheet. I'll get back to my series shortly. Let's focus on the U.S. government debt position. This is, by the way, the number one reason why I save in gold and not in Federal Reserve notes. You can see right away that we have officially broken the $25 trillion level. $2 trillion of that, or close to 10%, has been added in only the last 4 months. Over the past 15 years, debt has risen by more than a factor of 3. How big is $25 trillion? It's an absolutely massive number. Let's put it into perspective relative to the U.S. economic activity. Back in early 2005, only 15 years ago, U.S. GDP stood at $13 trillion. At the time, our debt was $7.8 trillion, so the debt compared to the GDP was about 60%. Today, our debt of $25 trillion is higher than our GDP of $21.5 trillion. So we now have a debt to GDP ratio of 116%. Our rate of debt creation has outpaced the growth rate of the economy by a factor of 2 over the past 15 years. Clearly, this is not a good trend. And I'd argue that GDP is going to continue to decline over the foreseeable future, and this is only going to make things worse. As we'll discuss more in a minute, when the Treasury spends money, it can get it from a few different places. It can get it from taxes, it can get it by borrowing from the public, and if neither of those work, it can get it by the Federal Reserve creating money in exchange for bonds. In a softening economic environment, modern-day Keynesian thinking would have the government spend in order to spur on economic activity. So if government spending increases at a time when tax receipts are on the decline, then obviously the new spending will not be funded by taxes. So it must be borrowed. Is the public going to be able to buy the debt with surplus savings? Not likely. So the government will turn to the Fed. Think all of this is bullish for the dollar and bearish for gold? Someone's been listening to too many Harry Dent theories. Let's take a look at how much federal debt there is per person. Here's a familiar snippet from the U.S. debt clock. Notice that when we divide the debt by the number of citizens in the U.S., it works out to be about $76,000 per person. But then, not all of those people are in the workforce earning money. If we divide the number by the number of taxpayers, we get an unbelievable $202,000 per person. How long do you think that it would take for you to pay off $202,000 on your salary if you still had a mortgage to pay, car payments, credit card payments, state and local taxes to pay, etc.? I'm guessing the debt is not going to go down anytime soon. If anything, it will increase at a faster and faster clip. And by the way, it's probably not right to divide the debt by the number of taxpayers. Remember, quite a few of those taxpayers are government employees, so the taxes they pay are a portion of the money that the government pays them. The right way to look at this is debt per private sector employee, which would make the ratio much higher. We are entering into a period of time when the government is going to turn more and more to the Federal Reserve to create the cash that it needs to spend. So let's see what the Fed has been doing lately. As I've shown in some of the videos I put out a few weeks ago, the Federal Reserve balance sheet, shown here as the blue curve on the left axis, has expanded quickly since the beginning of the year. So far it's up $2.5 trillion, or 60%. And that's just over a few months' time. It was a truly alarming rate of increase. I'm happy to see that the rate of increase has slowed considerably over the past couple of weeks. This is a good sign. We'll have to monitor this to see if it starts to climb rapidly again. Remember, watch what they do, not what they say. Now, as I've said in the past, quite a bit of the money that they created did not go into circulation. Currency in circulation is shown as the red curve plotted against the right-hand axis. What the Federal Reserve did do was it took debt onto its asset register and then created offsetting liabilities on its liabilities register. The net result was that the balance sheet expanded without the money supply increasing by a great deal. This was the same tactic that they used in 2009 when they bailed out the banks. So far, despite the Fed assuming $2.5 trillion worth of assets, currency in circulation has only increased by about $100 billion over the same period of time. But remember what I said a few weeks ago. We're going to have to watch to see if those assets do indeed get monetized. We can see that currency in circulation is starting to tick up again. But let's take a look at something quite alarming. Remember that I said that the reason why the currency in circulation has not been increasing has been that the Federal Reserve is creating offsetting liabilities on their balance sheet? Well, take a look here at Table 1 in the H41 statistical release. The account the Treasury holds at the New York Fed currently stands at over $1.1 trillion. This is money that sits there, ready to be spent at the discretion of the Treasury Secretary. At the beginning of the year, this account held only $383 billion, so the Fed has essentially monetized $774 billion worth of Treasury paper, but the money has not yet been spent into the economy. It will be, folks. You can be sure of that. And when the money is spent, it is going to cause the balance sheet at the New York Fed to go down. When this happens, it is going to increase currency in circulation by about 40%. Prepare yourselves, folks. The gun is cocked and loaded. Gold. Get you some.